So it's LD 1611. It's an act treatment for segregation prisoners, special management agreement prisoners. And the hearing is going to be February 17th, so a week from today. It's up in Augusta before the Criminal Justice Committee at 1 p.m. So if you're interested in going, my contact information is in that descriptive paragraph of the bill, and you can email me, and I'm happy to try and help coordinate rides up, or if you'd like to know how to submit.
Have solitary confinement in Maine, and I'd like just to be educated a little bit about some facts and figures.
In Maine, at the state prison, they call it the Special Management Unit, SMU. In Warren, about 100 prisoners out of 900 are in solitary confinement at any given time.
What I'm saying to you is that solitary confinement is increasing in the state of Maine, and it has been increasing, especially since the opening of the Supermax and with the housing of mentally ill people.
And it's really, really important that that law has to have, you cannot put mentally ill people in segregation or isolation. You simply exacerbate their mental illnesses, then you drop them right into the community. It's chaos. It's inhuman. It's illegal. And that has to be stopped. Let's start rehabilitating our brothers, sisters, fathers, uncles, cousins, and bring them home as productive, law-abiding citizens, not maniacs. 97% of the people in prison are coming back to the street. The question is, how do you want them back there? Better or worse? Right now, they're coming back worse.
To be held guilty of a crime that one hadn't committed with exculpatory evidence to prove innocence, evidence that has been willfully overlooked by the courts, is an act of terrorism. But what is even more terrifying is that unless there is an intervention by courts showing integrity, Albert and Herman will have to spend the remainder of their lives in prison, in solitary confinement for a crime neither committed. One has said justice delayed is justice denied. I agree with that. However, suffice it to say that justice delayed is equal to terrorism.
The Council of Churches since 2006 has been part of a national movement called the National Religious Coalition Against Torture. And it began as a movement to object to U.S. policies and holding prisoners in the so-called war on terror in places like Guantanamo and Bagram Air Force Base. Recently, the National Religious Campaign has decided through a process of consultation with the hundreds of religious groups around the country that belong to it, including the Maine Council of Churches, to expand the mission to include the treatment of prisoners in U.S. prisons. Our role in this really has been to be at events like this. I spoke at a press conference a couple weeks ago up in Augusta with the other organizations that are here. We'll be testifying in front of the legislature on the 17th on the issue. And then really our role is going to be to put out the word as much as possible and get as many people of faith, and it is an interfaith effort, to show up. Clergy, lay people, people of conscience as well, people who may not particularly identify with a particular faith tradition, but who are people of good conscience who feel that we can't be silent on an issue like this.
And define one day in Maine solitary as torture. He's not coming here just for 1611. He's 100% for it. I'm in touch with him. Next year, we're going to move towards outlawing torture in Maine. Two kinds of torture we practice here and across the country. Solitary confinement and what's called instruments of torture, such as restraint chair. Maine is a wonderful place and a likely place to be the first state to outlaw torture. Torture is not illegal in any state in this country.
So please buy his book, read it, and share it with a friend who may question whether this happens in America, because this does happen in America. Innocent people are wrongfully incarcerated for decades or for the rest of their lives. Second, Please support us in legislative action here. But here in Maine, solitary confinement is occurring with use of what's called special management unit, which does create solitary confinement or segregation conditions for prisoners. And at the national level, research has shown in the past decade that that condition of segregation creates mental illness where none previously existed or exacerbates mental illness conditions. So LD 1611 would do several things. First, it prohibits the placement of the mentally ill in the special management unit. It requires that they're transferred to a secure mental health unit. It further requires immediate evaluations within 72 hours and ongoing evaluations to monitor the mental health of inmates who are placed in the special management unit. It bans the use of the restraint chair that George so eloquently testified to as being torture. And it provides the due process conditions that another audience member said were so necessary, a due process for a prisoner who's placed in special management unit. So while this bill is only the first step, and while it's incomplete, it's very important and it matters. And your presence in Augusta, either in person next Wednesday at the hearing, if not to testify, just to be present, is important. And if you can't be there in Augusta on Wednesday, then coming back the following week for the Day of Conscience on February 23rd. And if you can't go to Augusta because you work, please communicate with your elected officials, communicate with your legislators. And finally, I would encourage you to organize, to associate with one of the groups who are here tonight with Mainers Against the Abuse of Solitary Confinement, or get a membership in the NAACP or the MCLU or the Maine Council of Churches according to your preference. Because organized and together we can make a difference.
There's a second way to support the bill on February 23rd, which is the Tuesday afterwards. In about 2 weeks, there's going to be a lobby day at the State House. We're calling it a People of Conscience State House Day of Action.